Pursuant to Section 13 of Article 5 of the Indiana Constitution, the Indiana General Assembly is convened for the purpose of hearing a message from the Governor. Ladies and gentlemen of the House and the Senate, distinguished guests, I have the high honor of introducing the Governor of the great state of Indiana, Mike Pence. Senator Doug Eckerty, Senator Karen Talion, Senator John Broden, Representative Tim Brown, Representative Kathy Richardson, Representative Sheila Klinker, and Representative Melanie Wright.
Speaker Bosma, President Pro Tem Long, Lieutenant Governor Ellspermann, Senator Lannon, Representative Pilaf, members of the General Assembly, distinguished guests, my fellow Hoosiers. Tonight, on the eve of our bicentennial year, I stand before you as your governor to proudly report that the state of our state has never been stronger. And if we keep faith with the character of our people, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish in our next century. Indiana's on a roll. And I'm not just talking about the Colts. How about those Colts? But seriously, Indiana's blessed. We have the best state legislature in America. And together, we've made Indiana the fiscal envy of the country. We've balanced budgets, funded priorities. We've maintained strong reserves. And still, we were able to pass the largest state tax cut in Indiana history. A win for Indiana taxpayers. And here in the state that works, Hoosiers are going back to work. Unemployment has fallen faster here than almost anywhere in the country. When I was elected governor, unemployment was over 8%. Today it's 5.7% and falling. We've added more than 100,000 private sector jobs in the last 2 years. And we're on track to have more Hoosiers going to work in this state ever before. Now, and while we maintain a strong balance sheet, we've also made necessary investments in education, and building the roads of the future. We've increased support for schools. We approved the first ever state funding for quality pre-K. And we invested more than $800 million in new funding for roads in this last budget alone. The result? Graduation rates are up. Test scores are up. The doors are already open to our pre-K program, creating opportunities for disadvantaged kids here in the Hoosier State. And Indiana is now home to the largest educational voucher program in the United States of America. You know, I like to say there's 49 other governors in this country who wish they could be me. But let's be clear. Our state has never been stronger, not because of our government, but because of our people. They just don't come any better than Hoosiers. Hardworking, patriotic, modest, and generous to those in need. You know, everyone knows the story of Indianapolis police officer Perry Wren, a courageous police officer who squared his shoulders in the face of deadly force to protect our capital city, and he paid with his life. What you may not know is the story of two little heroes that followed after that story, Jason and Ben Troxell, ages 8 and 5 respectively. They're the sons of Officer Wren's partner, and they were inspired in the midst of that tragedy to raise money to outfit the Indianapolis Police Department with better body armor. And those two little boys, 8 and 5 years old, have now raised more than $20,000 to make our police safer. Would you join me in thanking Lynn Wren and our two young heroes who show the courage and kindness that makes Indiana great? Now that's enthusiasm. You know, but nowhere is the character of our people more evident than those who serve in uniform. The evil that came to the streets of Paris last week may seem far removed, but the brutal murder of our own Peter Cassie, a courageous young man, an aid worker who was killed by ISIS terrorists, was a stark reminder that we are all part of a global war of civilization against barbarism. Tonight, Hoosiers should be proud to know that on the front lines of that war are some 300 airmen from the 122nd Fighter Wing out of Fort Wayne, in the largest deployment of the Air National Guard in the last 10 years. To these airmen and their families and their leadership, along with General Umbarger of the Army National Guard who are with us tonight, let me assure you of our prayers. Let me assure you of the heartfelt gratitude of the people of Indiana for your service, and we will pray you home. You know, more than 30 years ago at this very podium, President Ronald Reagan said in words that are carved on a plaque just back in the back of this chamber, that the federal government was, quote, still operating on the outdated and arrogant assumption that the states can't manage their own affairs. That day, he predicted that it would be states like ours that would come to America's rescue. States like ours that would, in his words, offer the most creative solutions and most promising hopes for our nation. Well, Reagan was right. At a time when public confidence in our federal government is at an all-time low, states have emerged as a source of inspiration on fiscal policy, economic growth, education, and health care reform. And Indiana is leading the way. Here in Indiana, we've been proving every day that we can balance our budgets, run our schools, choose our health care, and serve our people far better than that proverbial little intellectual elite on a far distant capital ever could. But to whom much is given, much will be required. And ladies and gentlemen, we have work to do. Last week, I submitted my recommended budget to the General Assembly. It's an honestly balanced budget that holds the line on spending, maintains strong reserves, funds our priorities with no new debt. Now, fiscal discipline has been the hallmark of the past decade in Indiana governance. Our balanced budgets have led to economic growth, lower tax rates, and job creation. And remarkably, Indiana is one of the few states in the country that does not have a balanced budget requirement in our Constitution. It really is a tribute to the public servants in this room that Indiana has adhered to that practice in recent years, even though it's not required. A balanced budget requirement in the Constitution of the state of Indiana will assure Hoosiers that today and tomorrow, Indiana will spend wisely, protect our state from an economic downturn, and unlike Washington, D.C., we won't bury our children and grandchildren under mountains of debt. Let me commend Senator David Long for his leadership on a federal balanced budget amendment, and let me call all of us in this chamber tonight. Let's begin the process in this session of adding a balanced budget amendment to the Indiana Constitution and send this historic reform to the people of Indiana for ratification. Over the past 2 years, we've made lots of progress. We've made great progress cutting taxes. But now in this session, let's continue the work by simplifying the tax code and take steps in this session to prevent a rapid increase of property taxes on Indiana's family farmers. And let's remember that low-cost energy is vital to our economy, that we need an all-of-the-above energy strategy, including energy efficiency. And know this, Indiana is a pro-coal state, and we will continue to oppose the overreaching schemes of the EPA until we bring this war on coal to an end. And to remain the crossroads of America, let's, in this coming budget, invest another $300 million in new funding for roads. And let's give our cities and towns new resources to plan regional strategies for growth. Now, balanced budgets and the right priorities are a starting point to improving our economy. But the key to unlocking the full potential of our state is not so much going to be found in her factories and in her fields, but in her classrooms. Let's agree here and now, Republican and Democrat alike, that this will be an education session of the Indiana General Assembly, and we will improve our schools for all of our kids. Now, my philosophy of executive leadership is pretty simple. You set a big goal, you offer solutions, but you stay open to other ideas about how to achieve them. With that approach in mind, and with more than 100,000 kids in underperforming and failing schools in our state. Let's make it our goal in this session of the General Assembly to have 100,000 more students enrolled in high-quality schools by the year 2020. That's 100,000 more kids in B or better schools by the end of this decade. Now, to achieve this goal, we must fund excellence. We must expand choices, and we must ensure that education in Indiana works at the very highest levels. That's why I propose more state dollars for K-12 education than ever before, increasing tuition support by $200 million over the next 2 years alone. And building on our historic first step last session, let's, in this session, invest $10 million a year to fund scholarships in our new pre-K program, because every Hoosier child deserves to start school ready to learn. Now, there are those who think that improving education is just about increasing funding. But money alone isn't the answer. Everyone knows that it's good teachers that make the difference. I should know. I've been married to a school teacher for 30 years this year. In fact, she's with me tonight. Would you join me in welcoming the best First Lady in the United States of America to this chamber, my wife, and a school teacher, Karen Pence. So how do you get more good teachers like my wife in her career? Or my father-in-law, up in the gallery today, who was Indiana State Teacher of the Year back in the 1980s. Well, I think you get more good teachers in the classrooms by paying good teachers more. And that's just what we've been trying to do over the last several years. This year, we were able to award $30 million in bonuses to teachers in 1,300 schools across Indiana. And building on that success, I believe we should provide another $63 million for performance bonuses and refocus resources on the classroom. More freedom for our schools and more dollars in the classroom is a prescription for success and will pay dividends for generations. And because all honest work is honorable work, let's continue to make sure that our schools work for all of our kids, regardless of where they want to start in life. And let's come together across the aisle and continue to work in a bipartisan way until we make career and vocational education a priority in every high school in the state of Indiana again. The General Assembly embraced that vision in bipartisan fashion just 2 years ago. And together, we've begun to improve the career and technical education opportunities for our students. We've distributed millions of dollars in grants and seen innovation in schools across our states, like up in LaPorte County, where the high schools and a local utility are actually working together, preparing students for careers in electronics and energy. They actually set up what they call an energy academy. The driving force behind that effort, and one of the keys to the success in career and technical education in Indiana, is with us tonight. The Indiana Career and Technical Education Director of the Year, Audra Peterson. Thank you for your great leadership. By providing $20 million more a year to support career and vocational opportunities and improving the way that we fund those courses, I believe we can dramatically increase the number of students who graduate career ready. An increase by a factor of 5, the number of students who graduate with an industry-recognized credential by the year 2020. And as we open new opportunities within our public schools, let's resolve to give more parents the chance to choose where their kids go to school by expanding our choice and public charter school programs here in Indiana. It'll be right for our kids and right for Indiana. Kids like Nathan. You know, Karen and I are friends with Nathan's mom. She's a single mom, and he's a wonderful young man. They live right here in Indianapolis. But frankly, at age 15, not long ago, Nathan was one of those kids who was falling through the cracks. We heard he couldn't quite find a school that worked for him. And his mom and us, we all saw the trajectory he was on. So we came alongside. We talked to his mom about other choices that are available in our state. And my wife managed to point them in the direction of one of our innovative public charter schools. I'll never forget the day Karen came home and told me that Nathan had visited that school with his mom. After he'd gone in and seen, in that case, the individualized learning model where all the kids learn at their own pace, he walked out of the school where his mom, I'm told, was anxiously waiting on the sidewalk, wringing her hands. And she looked at him and said, "Well, Nathan, what'd you think?" And he looked back at her in words she said she'll never forget and said, "Mom, if I go here, I'll flourish. If I go here, I'll be a leader." Well, he just started a few days back. And his mom told me just this morning, Nathan's doing great. You know, that really is what it's all about. Kids like Nathan. And opening doors of opportunities to more Hoosier kids to have more options for the kind of education that will work for them. Today, some 30,000 low and middle income kids are actually able to have that choice, to attend the school that works best for them because of our Choice Scholarship Program. Let's open more doors of opportunities to more Hoosier families like Nathan's by lifting the cap on the dollar amount that choice schools receive for students and raise the cap on the Choice Scholarship Tax Credit Program. And because public charter schools receive significantly less total funding per pupil than traditional schools, let's adjust funding for our charter students to allow more communities to offer more choices for families just like Nathan's. That's a win for them, and that's a win for Indiana. But you know, nothing's more important than the health and well-being of our people. Hoosiers have long believed that we must care for the needs of our most vulnerable, the aged, the infirm, and our children, born and unborn. That's why we advanced a tax credit for adoptive parents, and we're fully funding our adoption subsidy going forward. That's also why we made reducing infant mortality a top health priority in our administration. Let me take a moment to thank Speaker Brian Bosma for putting reducing infant mortality at the very center of this coming session of the General Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow we'll launch a campaign called The Labor of Love to educate new and expecting moms across our state over the next year. But we all need to work together on this. But let me say this. If you're an expectant mom, or if you have a little one on your lap, help is on the way. Together, we can, and together we will reduce the heartbreak of infant mortality in Indiana. You know, there is an old saying that when everyone in your family is healthy, you got lots of problems. But when one member of your family is sick, you've only got one problem. You know, from the beginning of my tenure as governor, we've been committed to bringing Hoosier solutions to bear on the challenges in health care. We've been saying no to Obamacare in Indiana, no to establishing a state exchange, and no to expanding a broken Medicaid system. You know, Medicaid is not a system that we should expand. It's a program we need to change. And that's just what we've been doing with the Healthy Indiana Plan. The original program, crafted more than 6 years ago in this chamber on a bipartisan basis, is the basis of our new proposal. A proposal that would offer more low-income Hoosiers the chance to get quality insurance and control their own health care. And let me tell you something. We've been working hard to get it done. To get Washington to say yes. I've gone to our nation's capital, engaged in hours of discussions with federal officials. I even took our case directly to the president on the tarmac outside Air Force One in Evansville one day. As our discussions go forward, let me assure all of you of this. I will continue to stand firm for the right to expand access to coverage the Indiana way based on personal responsibility and empowering Hoosiers to take control of their health care choices. But we will not accept terms that relegate low-income Hoosiers to substandard health care or jeopardize the fiscal health of the state of Indiana. Now, the road ahead won't be easy, but I'm confident. I'm confident because of the people we serve. I mean, Hoosiers have always been willing to do hard things, to embrace change, to build schools of promise and policies that will advance the prosperity and safety and well-being of our people. I believe if we act with resolve in this year, if we're bold, we will fulfill Indiana's promise for this generation and the next. We'll have more Hoosiers going to work than ever before and continue to be a model of fiscal responsibility for the nation. We will have more kids attending high-quality schools than ever before and more kids graduating, ready for college or careers. And we will improve the health and well-being of our people by empowering individuals to take responsibility for themselves and their families. And we'll do it all the Indiana way, based on fiscal responsibility, personal responsibility, self-reliance, and the values and common sense that are synonymous with the Hoosier State. And when we do this, we will fulfill the promise not just of our time, but we will fulfill the promise first forged beneath that Constitution elm in Corydon back in 1816. The promise of a state that would be built on freedom and that would become a beacon of hope and an example to the nation. So with boundless faith in the people of Indiana and faith in God's grace to see us through, I say the best days for Indiana are yet to come. Let's get to work. Thank you. And God bless you. And God bless the great state of Indiana.
This joint session of the General Assembly is now adjourned.
Representative Friend is recognized for a motion on behalf of the House. Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by voting aye. We are adjourned.
I might have, I don't know. You know, you're a good looking subject. I'll see what I can do.